Welcome everyone to the SIG CLI KRM Functions subproject meeting on February 9th, 2022. We have a pretty light agenda today, so I guess we'll just get started. Everyone, please add your name and company to the agenda here. You have a chance. So the first topic I have is just a quick one that I put in here. And basically we have this schema that we proposed in the KEP. And I was working on the KRM function framework this past week. And something that I ran into was it would be really nice if we could use the KubeBuilder pattern to generate the open API for a given KRM function type when you're writing your function as a function author, and then pull that back in for use as validation and have the framework help you with that. Now, the KubeBuilder obviously doesn't know anything about our types. That wouldn't make sense. But it knows how to generate CRDs, which look almost exactly the same, but not quite. So I wanted to float the idea of making very small changes to this part of the spec, basically the part that describes an individual KRM function, so that the fields that we have in common with CRD are in the exact same places. Because if we did that, you could use tooling that's actually built for CRD to process and generate stuff for KRM function transparently. I have some code not on the computer that I'm on at the moment, but that shows an example of this where you can have a struct that is actually for KRM function, but it's sparse and it only has like the group kind and version schema part of it. And you can have that load a CRD and it doesn't know that it was a CRD because it looks the exact same and has all the correct fields for the validation portion of a KRM function. And that means that you can literally use KubeBuilder to generate the open API for your type and consume it back in a validation function of the framework as though it were actually the proper KRM function description. Now, ultimately, I think it would be awesome if we did build a bespoke thing that generated the full correct KRM function type off of annotations the way KubeBuilder does, but I feel like that is really far out for us. And with this really simple change to basically put things like what is it? It's group, I think, is in the wrong spot. Like it's under a names field instead of at the top level. It's very small changes. And then there's a top level version or what is it? It's called validation, top level validation field that can provide validations for all versions that we don't support and that CRD has. With those really, really small changes, then all this tooling would just be compatible and we would have be able to use it up front. So I just wanted to make that proposal and I'll make a PR to the KEP, but any thoughts about that?
I think I like these ideas, like having a tools like like controller tools in KubeBuilders that generate this, so it streamline the workflow for the users. But for the part that you said we need to make some change. So what change do we need to make? So are you saying we need to make it more like CRDs, so we can reuse controller tools to generate CRDs? Is that the?
Yeah, essentially this part, like the part that describes an individual KRM function, is like super close to CRD. And my proposal is that whenever our schema has a field that CRD also has, we put it in the same place in the structure so that the tooling will be compatible. So like there are fields that CRD has that make no sense on the client side. And I'm not saying we should add those in, just leave them out. I'm saying where there is overlap, let's just put the fields in the same place. So that would mean in practice, I think moving the group field and having a top level validation that allows you to provide an open API v3 for all your versions. Those are the two main ones that I noticed so far. It also doesn't mean we can't have additional fields. That's totally cool. I'm not proposing changing that at all. Those can be wherever they want. Just like where the fields exist in both types, let's make them exist in the same place in the structure.
But for the validation schema in CRD, I think the top level validation schema is deprecated. So the suggested way is to use per version validation schema.
Oh, I know it's older. On the type, there's no deprecation. Maybe it's somewhere else. I was just looking at the type directly, so maybe I missed it. If it's deprecated, then yeah, we don't need to support it for sure. If we're okay with the idea in general, I'll just make a PR that shows the exact changes that would flow out of that. I just realized that this morning, actually, as I was working on this, that would be a potential big leverage point if we just aligned in a small way.
I think I generally like these ideas. So our initial design inspiration is inspired by the CRD structure. So I think it make more sense if we can make it even more like CRD.
Great, I'll make the PR then. Action item. There we go. So we didn't have any other topics in the agenda today. Is there anything anyone would like to bring up before we go to stand-ups? Hearing nothing, let's just go for that. So, okay. The SDK, the registry, and I guess let's grab from last time. There's nothing to say about composition, so catalog. Anshu, do you want to lead with the function SDK stand up? You've been working on that a lot.
Sure. So for the function SDK, so as you suggested, so right now I've split the KRM/YAML package change into a separate PRs with changes. So it's ready for review.
Great.
Yeah. And another.
Thank you for doing that.
Oh, sure. And another thing I want to bring up is, so I have mentioned this to Katrina, and I also asked this question in the PR. So the problem is that in our we rely on the go-YAML package to do the lower level YAML parsing and the serialization stuff. So, but there's a problem with that when parsing with, the Kubernetes resources. Since Kubernetes resources doesn't, the struct doesn't natively provide the YAML tag, which the go-YAML package rely on. So that means when an object embed a Kubernetes, let's say, metadata field, so our library won't be able to parse it. It's really frustrating for the users. I think we have seen users complain about this. And I have a idea to solving this, which is right now it's get the YAML tag first. I think we can fall back on the JSON tag if the YAML tag is empty. So this can make it work when there's only JSON tag. So I mentioned this to Katrina. So it seems we even though we have an internal fork, but we don't intend to make it a permanent fork. So the idea probably is to like create a PR in the upstream repo, and then in our own fork use the script to copy that. I think that's the current current plan, I guess.
We are only doing that for emergency fixes. Generally speaking, we don't want to touch the YAML library because as soon as say we introduce that change, right? The changes that we've made so far using that mechanism that I mentioned were to fix like critical regressions from the end user standpoint, from end user customized specifically. So the effect of making those patches was that we were able to do a customized release that included some GoYAML fixes from further ahead upstream than we had been before. So that probably didn't make sense. So like GoYAML, we're using at version whatever. There were a bunch of fixes in there that we wanted to pick up, but along with those fixes, there was a critical regression. So we weren't able to move forward to this point in time. So what we needed to do was basically fix that critical regression in our own fork. And that's the only thing that our fork has right now. So from an end user point of view, there's no new features in the internal fork. And we kind of want to keep it that way so that we're not stuck with it forever. Whereas the thing that you're proposing here, that is definitely a feature that end users could start relying on, where you can suddenly use JSON tags. Like that is the major feature of the SIG YAML library, right? That most of Kubernetes is using to process. The SIG YAML is based on the V2 of the Go YAML, and that's the enhancement that it makes to it. If I remember correctly, like the main one is the processing JSON tags. So I don't want to just like silently do that in our fork and get stuck with it forever. So I'm wondering, I actually ran into this myself this week because as I was mentioning, I was experimenting using KubeBuilder. KubeBuilder does not allow you to generate anything unless you have embedded Meta v1. So I ran into this exact problem where a bunch of the points in the framework tooling were not serializing or deserializing my types correctly anymore once I made that change. So I totally empathize with this. In my case, I was able to fix just a couple specific places because it was always some under the hood framework thing that was doing the wrong thing that did not affect, like that didn't actually need our nodes at that point. So I was able to just use the SIG YAML to do the sort of round tripping that I was doing at that moment in time to just transparently fix the problem without exposing, without needing to change GoYAML and without needing to like change what gets exposed to the end user in terms of it always being our nodes. So I'm wondering if is there an equivalent change? I think you have it actually in your PR, the equivalent change where like there's a very specific place where we know where we're handling the end user struct as a struct. So when we're doing that, we need to support the possibility that they're using JSON tags. So that means we need to load or we need to unmarshal into it with the other library, which is like a little weird, but it's on us. It's like the complexity is on us to handle. So I'm not like super worried about just doing that. Like the end user never knows that we use that library or the other one, right?
Yeah, for that part, we can hide it, but if a user just want to do YAML.unmarshal, so then what the user gonna be used here?
Theoretically, the purpose of the framework is to sort of handle that part for them, right? Like if we're talking about their function config, theoretically they should always be going through the tools, and the tool should be unmarshalling into their type for them, right? Or do you have another like point in the workflow that you think they would need to be doing that still?
No, I guess no.
I agree that like there's a big problem that we have here with the like it's very confusing that there are so many different YAML libraries. The Go YAML v3, KYAML wrapping Go YAML v3, the SIG YAML wrapping Go YAML v2, and then I think there's another one that's just not related that is also used by some Go projects. Super confusing situation. But I don't think the solution at this point, like given the staffing that our project has, can be for customized /KYAML to take on maintainership of a permanent hard fork. If it probably wouldn't even be SIG CLI at all that would maintain a hard fork of Go YAML. It would probably be like API machinery. So I don't want to just like do that through a back door and end up stuck with it. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I don't know.
So, but another concern about this Go YAML package is that so it seems it's not very actively maintained. So last commit in V3 branch was more than 1 year ago, and there are so many open the PR was standing there.
Yeah, it essentially has a sole maintainer, and it's somebody who is very, very busy. Natasha has some experience trying to get something merged there where they actually agreed to the feature in general, but we repeatedly pinged and it's the critical fix that's in our fork. Like we don't want the fork at all. We thought we had alignment to just get that merged upstream, and it never happened. So it's super painful for us and for Kustomize in particular. We can't, as I'm sure you've noticed, like all of KYAML is built around the ability to use rnode, which is what YAML v3 is offering over, well, any of the other options. That's why KYAML doesn't lose comments. That's why it lets you modify the details of the style of the various YAML nodes. We're kind of stuck with Go YAML v3 because of our reliance on that stuff, which is giving us a lot of benefits, but there's not really an alternative, unfortunately. I share your concern, though, absolutely.
I did also talk to Jordan about potentially creating a permanent fork with API machinery. I think that's definitely a possibility, but someone would need to drive that.
So Jordan was receptive to the idea?
He didn't say no. He said we would probably want to fold it into the SIG YAML library.
Yeah, and there is a PR open there. It's been open for a long time. That's attempting to read this over v3. So maybe that's how it will happen eventually. Did Jordan mention that? Not specifically? Or?
No, he didn't say anything about anything other than we'd probably just put it in the SIG YAML library if we did want to fork permanently.
Yeah. Maybe we should go to SIG API machinery as a group. The problem is that, like, as far as I know, none of us have bandwidth to volunteer to own that. So it would be an ask of another SIG to completely do something for us, which is something we can totally do, but be aware of the intensity of that ask. Munchie, is that something that you feel passionate about and would want to bring up with API machinery?
So I can do that if no one else want to do that.
I'll definitely show up to help advocate for customizers needs as well.
Yeah, I can also show up and support.
When will be the next SIG API machinery meeting?
They are Wednesdays at 11 Pacific. Every other week. Let's see when the last one was. I think the 23rd is the next one. Today's was canceled.
Okay. So maybe we should all go to that one to discuss.
Yeah, sounds good. We can go to that one. It's 2 weeks away, I think.
Anything else about the SDK?
That's pretty much all, I think.
I guess I could mention that, like the stuff that I was talking about earlier at the beginning of the meeting, I'm gonna be making a PR showing how we can support that functionality, basically making it easy to use OpenAPI schemas for validation. Basically has a second hook in the load function config that allows you to provide a schema and then uses it automatically if you do provide one. I think it would be pretty powerful. So yeah, that'll probably be later today. So function registry, I saw some PRs go through for that. That's pretty exciting.
Oh yeah. So for the function registry, so Natasha is moving the render Helm chart functions into the registry with some testing and testing setup. And so I'm helping Natasha with the prod test job setup. So we will need a Docker in Docker for our testing. But it seems the Docker daemon was not running, so I'm still investigating that.
I actually wanted to ask Katrina, do you know how does the customize pre-submit job run Docker? Because it just has like a Go image as the base image, so I didn't understand why that works for customize but not for our job.
Are we sure customize is actually running Docker?
Well, if I run the pre-submit locally without Docker running, it always fails. So I assumed that it is running Docker in the pre-submit check, but maybe not.
I would look in the code to see if we have any like skip if Docker not available,
Yeah.
and then like
right.
global flag.
Okay.
But yeah, I actually don't know, to answer the question. I actually have no idea how the pre-submit job works. I haven't dug into that aspect since I joined the project, so unfortunately I don't know.
It doesn't appear customized pre-submit test is running Docker in Docker.
I think Katrina's right. I think there's a skip. I found a function called skip if no Docker.
So that's the main problem that you're facing now, is how to get the tests to run properly.
Yeah. So basically, how to get the Docker daemon up and running. Yeah. So it's right now blocking Natasha's test from running.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's all for the registry work. Natasha, do you have anything to add?
No, that's all. I did also CC Katrina and Jeremy on the PR if you're interested. The tests aren't passing, but it is still ready for like a preliminary review.
Is the idea that we're moving it over as is, so like existing consumers of the Google version can just like point to the new image, or is this a point where we're sort of thinking about how we want it? Like, is this a point where we're actually changing the API at all?
So I already changed the API in the like Google version to satisfy some of Customize's requirements, and then I'm moving all of that over as exactly as is.
Okay, cool. I guess we'll be able to, once that is done, we can almost transfer the issues, like the GitHub issues, over to the functions repo.
Yes.
All those ones that you tagged. That would be nice.
Yeah, that's all from me.
Great. So next up, catalog, Jeremy.
Yeah. So I have been pretty preoccupied with other day job stuff. We started 2 new projects, so I've been kind of focused on getting those bootstrapped up. But I have returned last week to start working on this in more earnest. So my hope is to try to have a rough work in progress PR at the end of this week or early next week. That's what I've been working on for the last few days.
Are you working on the customized integration side or the like catalog building side?
I'm working on the customized integration piece first, just to see what that looks like and have that as the first thing to talk about.
Okay.
So if we change the KRM function schema, so it will impact the catalog integration since catalog is rely on that.
Yeah, definitely. And at the point I'm at right now, that's not super disruptive. I can make, I mean, it's not being used anywhere, right? So it's pretty easy for me to go and update and make changes as we adapt there.
Sounds good.
And then internally, we are using KRM functions in another place now. And there are 2 folks that are pretty dedicated working on that. And I'm going to try to invite them to these meetings, just as an aside. It's not really part of the stand-up, but I'm going to try to get them to come to these more fairly regularly so that we can also leverage their talents to help push things forward.
That'd be great. Any other topics before we close things off? All right, thanks everyone for coming.